Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Dark Art Society podcast. I'm your host, Chet, and today I'm going to keep the intro really short because we are continuing and finishing me and Ryan Peterson's tribute to David Lynch. This is part 2. Starts off with Dune and goes until the end. What's up with me? There's some paintings I'm trying to finish up. I'm going to have some Skullflower minis. Some 8x10 Skullflower studies. A couple of those. Those will be, if they're still available, because they go to my Patreon first. Patreon gets first opportunity to purchase. If they're still available, then you can get them at chetzar.bigcartel.com by the time this airs. Same with the Skullflowers. They should be available by then too, if they don't sell. Anyway, if you want to support me, you can go to patreon.com/chetzar. You can get first dibs at everything, all my new work and stuff. All my updates on everything I am doing, daily updates, usually tutorials, all kinds of stuff. If you want to support this podcast, go to patreon.com/darkartsociety and join for as little as $1. I think that's it. Yeah, let's see. That's it. Let's get on with it. Here we go with the part 2 of Ryan Peterson and my tribute to David Lynch. All right. Hope you enjoy it. What did you think of Dune? Because I'll tell you my story with Dune. I saw it in the theater as a Lynch fan at that point, and I didn't really like it at the time. You know, it was too confusing to me. I was kind of a kid though, I think. I saw it when it first came out. I was disappointed because I was expecting more Lynchian. But watching it now, I just watched it again for the first time since I seen it since I was a kid. And I actually really liked it. It almost felt like the technology, he didn't have the budget or the technology to really realize a lot of what was in the script. I felt like it's almost like it shouldn't have been made into a movie. It's not really Lynch's fault. There was too much kind of voiceover, people thinking to get the information there rather than telling the information through clever ways, dialogue. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. There was a lot of that. Like they were thinking, oh, what about this blah, blah, blah. And to fill you in on story points. Yeah. And then some of the visuals take you out of it because, like the sandworm stuff where they're writing it. It's not, it's just little
dodgy.
Yeah, a little dodgy, but man, I really enjoyed it though. I liked it this time. Like it was just so visually interesting. It wasn't so much about the story as much as like the creativity of the whole thing and the set design and, costuming was amazing. There was a lot of cool stuff about it.
That's the nice thing of what a big budget provides a filmmaker is it allows him to eat well, to get back to that quote. They ate well because all the money and time that went into the costuming and the sets and everything you felt. Those sets were beautiful. Some of the blue screen stuff, the effects were bad. Of course, Dune is a disappointment. But it is visually sumptuous, and I really like the music.
Oh, yeah. Music
by
is great.
Toto and Brian Eno.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because I was looking for that soundtrack forever, and I finally got it, and I was so happy. But you know why Dune doesn't work, of course, because he didn't have final cut.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
That's the key. That's what to get back to what you were talking about at the beginning. That's why it didn't work, because Lynch isn't someone that you should deny final cut.
Right.
He's such a visionary. You shouldn't do that. And a lot of credit goes to Mel Brooks, because even though Lynch didn't have final cut for The Elephant Man,
Yeah, he gave it to him, right?
Mel Brooks gave it to him.
Yep.
And so much of the success of both The Elephant Man and Lynch's career is like because of generosity from people like Mel Brooks.
Yeah. And again, why? Because Eraserhead was so amazing.
Yep.
It's like that's why Mel Brooks, it kind of opened everything for him, because it's
extraordinary.
You make something, if you make something that good, it's going to be noticed. Good.
It'll sustain you a lifetime.
Right.
Yeah.
So I felt like there was a lot to enjoy about Dune, but it wasn't a great film, but not as bad as when it came out. It got panned, and I remember not liking it and nobody liking it. And I don't feel like it's that bad. It's, I don't know. It's,
you know what? Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, you know who I thought stole the movie? Sting.
Oh yeah. He was great.
He was so charismatic. Every time you saw him, he stole every scene he was in. And so at the very end, I felt bad when he died.
Oh, I know what I wanted to say about it. One thing I really appreciated, and I don't know if it's like this in the books or not, but the Paul Atreides' father had a dog, a pug. And he's carrying this dog around, and I'm like, oh man, whenever they have a dog in a movie like this, the dog dies, and I hate it. And I always, it's one of my vows. If I ever make a movie, the dog won't die. Yep. And they have that war, and all that stuff happens, and at the very end, you see one of his men holding the dog, and I was like, he saved the dog. Like, he made a point to save the dog. Like, they're going into battle, and Patrick, the guy from Star Trek, the bald dude,
Patrick Stewart.
He's carrying the dog like in his costume while he's going out to fight. And at the very end, they're holding, when it's all's good, he's holding the dog. And I'm like, that's so cool that he saved the dog. He didn't kill the dog.
I did not notice that. I'm so glad you told me. Yeah.
So that's pretty awesome.
Because I hate that too. Whenever there's a cat or a dog.
Yeah. It's like, they're going to kill it. They're going to kill it. They put it in there just to kill it. Like, it's better somehow than killing a person.
It's a trope, and that's why there's a screenwriting book that's one of the best-selling screenwriting books is called "Save the Cat."
Oh, really?
And it has a yellow tomcat dangling from a rope on the cover.
That's great. Okay, I'm not alone.
You're right. I totally agree.
What I want to get back to Elephant Man a little bit, because I like when I was a kid, it didn't have this huge impression on me. When I first saw it in the theater, I was expecting Eraserhead weirdness, I think, but watching it this time, oh my God, I was like, this is one of his best. This is amazing. It's a masterpiece. It's perfect. It's flawless, and really emotionally heavy, like just sad. And it really, you feel so much. It's very like, compassionate movie in a huge way. It's like I was crying throughout the whole movie as an adult, just like I couldn't believe it. It was like, it felt like it opens like that's like that. I think anytime you cry hearing a song that's so amazing or see a movie that's so amazing, it feels like it opens an energy portal in your heart or something. It feels like it cracks something open, this healing thing, and it makes you feel good. But it was just like, I couldn't believe I had that reaction to it. It was so good and so well made and so simple too. It wasn't like needlessly complicated. The story was easy to follow and it felt comfortable. I didn't feel like it meandered, or it was just like, I just thought it was great. I was so impressed with it.
So I told you I watched it last night, and I've been kind of mixed because it's so sad to watch his movies knowing that there's nothing to look forward to in the future.
Right.
But when I watched it last night, Chet, and we've talked about it, and you alluded how strange this time we're in right now is.
Right.
That I had the same feeling. It made me feel compassionate.
Yeah.
It made me feel compassion for my fellow man, and that is such a wonderful thing, because I haven't felt a lot of compassion lately.
Right.
So that's the beauty of that movie, is it unlocks it.
Yeah.
And you know what else does? Straight story.
Yeah. That's the other one we need to talk about. Absolutely. That's such a sweet hearted film. That ending just kills me. It's so good.
Oh,
It's so
it's
perfect.
sublime.
And it's
Perfect.
sublime. It's like the look on Harry Dean Stanton's face is just like, that's acting right there. Just so
Oh,
perfect. Uh, I,
perfect.
I saw, it's funny because I saw an interview with Lynch, and he was saying Freddie Francis on Elephant Man used to call him Lucky Lynch because he would get lucky all the time with shots, like the shot with Anthony Hopkins where he sees him and he cries.
Yeah.
He said
Yeah.
he said they just pushed in, and right when it stopped, this tear came out, and so Freddie Francis looked at him and was like, Lucky Lynch,
Oh,
because
I
that was
haven't
just
heard
one of
that.
those magic things that happens, you know.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, isn't that cool?
Yeah.
And the other thing to talk about Elephant Man a bit more is Freddie Francis is like, he did all those cool horror movies, those old Hammer horror movies, like and Amicus films. He's done Tales. Didn't he direct Tales from the Crypt and the
Yeah, he's a
original?
director. I can't remember what he directed, but he's a director.
He did a
Yeah.
bunch of cool. I know he did cinematography and some directing on some of those old Hammer movies and the Amicus movies, which I'm like a huge Amicus. I don't know if you're into Amicus.
Tell me what that is again.
Amicus is the horror anthologies, Tales from the Crypt, the one from 1970 or 71, Vault of Horror, Asylum. There's like, if you don't know these movies, you have to see them. They're so good.
So they're not Hammer. It's just another.
No, it was the
production.
other. It was like the low budget version of Hammer, and they were Torture Gardens, another one. They're all like 3 stories with like a wraparound sequence of, either a guy at a carnival. Oh, you got to see them. They're so good.
All right, I will, because I love that kind of stuff.
I like them way better than Hammer movies because they're a little cheesier and cheaper and more set in modern day, and the effects aren't very good. But I don't know if it's because I saw them when I was a kid that I have this kind of nostalgic feeling. But I'd be curious to see what you thought.
Okay.
They're great. They're cool stories. They're more edgy than Hammer films. They're a little more edgy for the time.
I think I've seen just clips or little certain things, but I need to revisit.
It's
those.
got the Tales from the Crypt has got that Grimsdyke as that zombie. He comes out. It's Peter Cushing is.
Oh yes, okay.
That's like a really great episode.
Oh, I need to watch that.
Oh, you got to watch it. Yeah, watch it. Try if you can. I'll send you a list of them because you got to see them all. They're so cool. Burgess Meredith is in one of them. He's like the host of one of them, like a evil carnival barker. It's so cool. It's great. They're great. They're so much fun. But anyway, so Freddie Francis was involved in a lot of those movies too, and he was kind of like an old school guy, and he was the cinematographer on Elephant Man.
So he and Dune.
Oh, and Dune. Oh, wow. Okay.
Yep. And then and I think he got nominated later for Glory, the movie Glory,
wow.
Matthew Broderick and Denzel Washington. But what Lynch does so well is he kept telling the developers of the labs, and I can't remember if it was Eraserhead or the Elephant Man, probably both, but to go darker, 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 darker.
Interesting.
And when I watched Twin Peaks: The Return, I actually felt like the digital aspect of filmmaking didn't help Lynch.
Right.
I prefer his practical effects, and I prefer the old school lighting schemes of like Eraserhead, because I didn't think the darks in The Return were as satisfying.
I was watching something recently where they was talking about like, with all the benefits of digital technology, you can't get the same look as film. I forget what it was. You can't get they were talking about why movies now are so dark. Like movies are generally like night scenes are too dark. People were complaining and showing all these clips of different films that like feel like they're too dark and you can't really see what's going on. And they were saying it's because of digital technology. And there's something about, I forget what the main point was, but it was something to the extent of you can't light it in the same way. You can't get the same depth of field with the lighting. And it's like something about,
no.
But the funny thing is, he was like one of the first, probably the first, or at least one of the first directors to use digital, like with Inland Empire. That was shot on that little handy cam by him. Like he was holding the handy cam. It was one of those mini DV things, which is crazy.
Yeah. And you're right. And I think, I don't know, maybe that didn't do, I mean, I think there's something that I find agreeable to the setup and the process it takes in film to achieve those shots, because I still kind of prefer. Yeah, I felt like Inland Empire was lacking because of maybe the spontaneity and the technology.
It's like you give up one thing and you gain another. Like he shot, he was able to shoot more stuff. It was affordable, a lot cheaper. Yeah. So, I know, but he was all in. I remember him talking about way back then. I remember him talking about how he was all for it, all for digital. He was like totally one of the first people to be all. He wasn't snobby about it, which you'd expect him to be. Very much like more, Yeah,
he was. You're right.
He was pretty open. He seemed like he would be, especially with these amazing looking movies like Eraserhead and Elephant Man, and it's like he'd be like a film guy, but he really wasn't.
Yeah, you're right. And I must say, like you said, you gain something and you lose something. My cat's hair is getting all over my face. Sorry.
That's right.
And so you're right. There's pluses and minuses, and in fact, I love Twin Peaks: The Return, but we can get to that whenever you're ready. But anything else on? I agree with you though. The Elephant Man is like a perfect film.
It is.
It's just absolutely heartbreaking, and it brings out the best in you.
Yeah. And it's that's one cool thing about having gone back and watching these ones that I kind of wrote off. Not that I wrote Elephant Man off, but I remember it didn't have that impact that Blue Velvet had for me. It is kind of like watching a new David Lynch film, watching all these movies I've been watching because I haven't seen them in so long. That's the cool thing about waiting 10, 15, 20 years to watch something again, is it's like it's like watching it for the first time again. So but we got to do a little more on the Straight Story before we move on to, because that is such, I just that one, the first time I saw it, I just was blown away. It was so good. I loved it. I think it's so normal. It's it's such so traditional. It's definitely his most traditional film, even more than The Elephant Man. I think less experiment. And he said, I feel like in a way he used to he would kind of pull people's legs too. He would say things as inarticulate. He's a very inarticulate speaker, but he does have, like you said, he has a kind of charm. Like he's got a vibe about him, but he was super inarticulate. I really feel like I've been watching a lot of interviews and he is not good with words. It's like I mean, what he's saying, but it's not eloquent. He's not eloquent with words.
Yes. He's smart.
Yes, totally smart. He's got wisdom. He had wisdom. He was smart. He was deep, but he was not easily able to eloquently. So what was my point? Let's talk about
Straight Story.
Straight Story. I feel like he kind of trolled people sometimes with some of the stuff he said. Like sometimes I think he was, there's that weird naivete that he would just say things and he meant it, and you'd think, oh, he's being ironic, but he wasn't. He's like genuinely like in that weird innocent kind of way. Just like in the way he said he believed in angels. It was just like, he wasn't being ironic. He was totally being serious. But he said that was The Straight Story was his most experimental movie. And I was like, he has to have been fucking with people by saying that, because it's his least experimental movie. I just can't, I watched it and I was like looking for something in the narrative that was more experimental. I mean, maybe for him, because it was so not
so
experimental that it was experimental to do something normal.
Maybe that's what he meant.
It
Because
could be.
I don't know what. Yeah, that's
But I
interesting.
felt like maybe he says he would say things to just be
Toy
weird intentionally or mess with people a little bit.
He was human.
Yeah.
Of course.
And he was funny. He would say things to be funny. So I could see saying that to be funny. Like, this is my most experimental film. The same way that he said Eraserhead was his most spiritual film. And, but I think he meant that. But then the guys asked him to elaborate, and he's like, no.
Oh. I could see the Lady in the Radiator being some kind of spiritual or mystical energy or being. Yeah, I can buy that.
And the guy at the beginning looking out the window, the
creator. Yeah, that could have been a god stand-in. Yeah,
that's totally spiritual kind of stuff.
Yeah, the Lady in the Radiator could have been like an angel type character, and yeah, the guy Jack Fisk plays at the beginning that starts it all. That could be symbol of God.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah. So anyway, the Straight Story. Just to cover that quickly, I just think it's again. I feel like that's kind of a perfect movie as well. I don't think it's flawed at all, and you at least for me, and I like those kind of movies. Like Lisa kind of makes fun of me, like you like these slice of life, a day in the life type movies where not a bunch of stuff happens, and I was like, yeah, I kind of do. Like, it's quiet, it's a gentle film, and you'd think that a guy traveling 200 miles in a tractor would be a boring movie, but I didn't find it boring at all. I thought it really captured, I don't know, this kind of feeling of, I don't know. I love the character. Like a lot of it is that actor,
Richard Farnsworth.
Yeah, Richard Farnsworth. He was so amazing. Like, you just totally believed that character. And he's, I love how, he's like stubborn, wanted to do it his way, but he was also like compassionate, very compassionate. I don't know if you remember that runaway at the beginning. She comes to his camp and she's kind of being an asshole to him. And she's like, what a bunch of junk. He's like, eat your dinner, missy. But he doesn't get all mad and insulted. He's like, you can tell he's seen it all. He's not going to waste getting angry on this. She's just a kid, there's like a lot of depth in the way that it was played, Yeah.
It's a slow burn of a movie. And it just seems to climax at that. And the most, like we said, we're talking about the ending with Harry Dean Stanton and his reaction to his brother.
So good,
so beautiful.
Tearjerker.
I don't think I've ever seen a movie that had such a slow build up to such a minimal, satisfying conclusion.
Yeah, right. Yeah, the whole thing was really minimal in a way, but I felt like I said, I didn't feel bored. Maybe other people would feel it was boring, but I just thought it was great. Sissy Spacek was amazing.
Oh, she was
so good in it.
She's married to Jack Fisk, his childhood friend. So they all know one another, and they've forever,
Yeah. I just love that. The scene in the bar too with the two. I don't know if you remember the two guys talking about their experience in the war.
Veterans, yeah. That was a real veteran too.
Oh, was it?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
That he was talking to.
That was so powerful. So good.
So good. I need to see it again though. It's been a while. It's almost kind of like too precious for me because I almost. Okay, this is what it is. I'm scared of the movie a little bit because when it came out in '99, you remember that scene where he was. There was a bunch of teenagers throwing footballs and stuff near where he was parking his.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're asking him about being
lawnmower, and one of them who was throwing the football asked him, "What's the worst part about being old?" And he goes, "Remembering when you're young."
Yeah.
And when I was watching it in '99, I was 29, and I was relating to the young guy.
Oh, no way.
If I watch it now, it's like it's going to be the tables are turned, and I'm going to be relating to him.
You have to watch it though. That's the reason you have to watch it, not avoid it.
I do, because I'll have a different take on it.
Because that's where we are. We're not that old, but we're old.
We're not the young ones.
We're not the young ones anymore.
Yeah.
So anyway,
it's a beautiful movie.
Really, really is underrated, I think, too. I don't think a lot of people bring up the Straight Story when they talk about David Lynch. It's not regarded as his greats, and I think it's one of his best for sure. I like it better than, I like it better than a lot of his later stuff.
Oh, I like it better than Lost Highway, Wild at Heart, and Dune, and maybe Inland Empire.
Yeah, but same. Not that those aren't great, but
I was crying when I left the theater, and I remember someone in a car drove by and noticed and said, "What did you just see?"
Really?
And I went, Straight story.
Yeah, that ending totally got me too. It's like,
but it was a beautiful cry.
Mm-hmm.
It was back to what you're saying about the Elephant Man. It opened up something compassionate in you, and we need that so bad.
I know. That's another reason him dying was such a tragedy, because the world is so fucked up right now. It's like we need David Lynch's. It's just like, I don't know if you know Steve Albini or not. He's like this famous underground record producer that died last year. Suddenly, he's like in his 60s. He's legendary for in the Chicago underground punk music scene, but he became a producer. He started his own business to record bands, and even though he got really famous, he recorded Nirvana's second album. He refused to take royalties because he felt like a producer's job was you get the band to sound how they sound. The band figures out how they sound. Most producers take credit and royalties their whole life, and he refused. And he does a flat fee. And he was like, my wife doesn't like it too much, but he just feels like he had that kind of integrity. Like, so you could go, I could go and have Steve Albini record my album it was like reasonable. He would charge, I forget, like $6,000 or something. He would produce your album, which is really cheap. So it's like, anyway, he's just this guy with so much integrity and so smart, and he died too. And it's just like, man, we're losing these amazing people at a time when like we need them more than ever.
You're right. That's so sad. You want people like that to stick around as long as possible. And yeah. Oh, shoot. Yeah.
Not to bring it down.
No,
but
no.
That's how I'm feeling, though.
Yeah, that's how I'm feeling too. And I remember how upset I was the first time a certain individual was elected, and Leonard Cohen had just passed away shortly thereafter. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, we need this. We need him around. We need him right now. It's like, this is terrible. But so yeah, that's how I felt about Lynch too.
Yeah. Okay, so let's Twin Peaks fan.
The series, I was really into it, but it faded out, and I only was into like the first couple episodes of the first season.
Okay, because he left it for a while, and then it got a little weird, but I think he came back or something, right?
Yeah, he directed something and came back, but I kind of didn't like the disingenuity of people being Lynchian, you know?
Right, yeah.
And that's kind of what happened, because he would hire different... Yeah. So it became hip to be consciously quirky like Lynch.
Yeah.
And that is not. That's the total opposite of what should be done.
Right.
And so if you get Lynch to do something, it has to be Lynch. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, just people being disingenuous.
Right.
And that's what I kind of felt like when I was watching Twin Peaks. It's like, I don't want to watch other people doing Lynch.
Yeah, no. It's funny because one of the things I watched, I think it was a show. It was some TV show on Lynch. Oh no, it was that Masterclass. Did you watch that Masterclass?
I didn't.
It was good. It's worth watching. It wasn't like mind blowing or anything. It's you probably wouldn't learn anything new from it, but they, the shots, like when they're changing chapters or whatever, different sections, they tried to do it all Lynchian. And it was like, this
Oh,
it's not when it's not right. You can't. Yeah, he's the genuine deal. You
yes.
can't fake it, and it looks cheesy. You know, it made it kind of cheesy to me.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I want that. Yes. And then that's what he exemplified so well, is that he was very unique, very original.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like that quote Frazetta said. It's like, don't be a second rate Frazetta, be a first rate you.
Right.
And it's
Absolutely.
like, that's kind of what both is good and kind of dangerous about these singular artists, is that they're so powerful.
Right. But that's but as artists, we're all trying to be that for ourselves. We're trying to be that
Yes.
powerful. That's our kind of dream. And
Yeah.
it's a hugely important aspect of being an artist that gets overlooked, I think, a lot of times, is being original.
Yes.
You know, it's a
The
big
only thing
part
that
of it.
matters to me.
Yeah, and it's hard. It's not easy to do.
So hard.
Takes,
Yeah.
and like you said,
Absolutely.
it takes time. You know, it really takes effort and it takes analysis, and it's really what you're doing is you're trying to be your truest self. So it's not even an intellectual exercise, I don't think, anyway, at least for me. It's not an intellectual exercise as much as it is allowing yourself to really express who you are without trying to change it consciously to be a certain way.
Yes.
And
Oh, yeah.
he was that kind of guy for sure. You can tell by the weird different movies he made. It's like if he would follow the idea and do it the way he thought the idea should be done, which is his whole thing, you know?
He designed his life as a koan so he could create his artwork purely.
Right.
And that is, I think, the hardest part. Like you said, it's like it's hard because in order to be pure, you have to be able to be open to your subconscious.
Mm-hmm.
And to be open to your subconscious, you have to tune a lot of stuff out. And like a koan, like what we were talking about before, or a mantra. And then you can't allow yourself to be distracted by it. So you have to design your life to not be distracted by that, what's around you, and be tuned into the subconscious. And he did it better than anybody.
Yeah.
And songwriters have to do it, and authors have to do it. And I almost think it's easier for them to do it because it's like to write a song, you just need yourself.
Right. Yeah.
And or to write a book, you just need to be by yourself.
Right.
But if you're a filmmaker,
you're relying on a lot of other
script,
people. Yeah.
and it's even harder. And I think that's what's kind of interesting about Phil Tippett's Mad God, is that, and I won't spoil anything, but it's a very stream of consciousness exercise movie. But he was employing very conscious techniques, because you can't have anything more conscious than stop motion animation.
Yeah. Right.
There's no improv.
Yeah.
Every little thing has to be thought out,
Yep.
scrutinized, and done perfectly. So he had and I think maybe mixed results, but I sure as hell admire the approach that he did that.
Yeah.
And he was able to do it as successful as he was, because that's incredibly difficult. But it's like, you're right. Lynch just had the ability to tune out things and design his life in that he had the cleanest access to the subconscious for his art.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure meditation helped with that. That's obviously that seemed to work for him because he was a big proponent of that. I did think it was funny. He's like, he was so into TM, that specific type of meditation. And in that masterclass, he's saying how the other types of meditation aren't good enough. He's like, they don't get you all the way there, but transcendental meditation, it's like, you could even tell David Lynch, that was his humanness right there, because I think that's bullshit. You know, I don't think that's true at all. But he was like a true believer in that. And, you know, I'm not going to I wouldn't hold it against him, but I was like, okay, that's not true. I know that's not true. That breathing isn't, he was saying like there's a breathing meditation, which is the more traditional one. And that's the same as a mantra. You're doing the exact same thing, focusing on your breathing as
whether
saying
it's
a mantra.
breathing or a koan or a mantra.
Right,
yeah.
I just
remember I told you about how I wrote a letter to the people at the Maharishi, David Lynch and Hegel and all them, because I was shocked to find out that it cost $2,500 to be trained in TM.
Right.
And I was insulted.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so I sent a letter, and I later, corresponded with Bob Roth, who was his main guy at the David Lynch Foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And he gave me a good explanation. He really did. And I think he was sincere. And I think Lynch was sincere, and everyone's sincere. Mm-hmm. But the price is rather staggering.
Well, now
for the average person.
I looked it up, and they have a sliding scale now, which is kind of good. Like it's cheaper. It's way cheaper. If you're a student, it's like $400. If you like they will work with you if you don't have money. So that's kind of good. But we talked about this before too. When we discussed this before, I feel like that Maharishi guy kept it expensive. So people, that works on the kind of psychologically that you're getting something valuable. And that, because a lot of it is sort of like,
it is psychological. Good point.
Belief that this is going to get you enlightenment is part of the reason you will get enlightenment from it, is because you're totally buying into it and accepting that in a way.
That's a really good point. I agree.
So I think maybe that was my theory. Anyway, okay. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
Cool.
Yeah. Well, and real quick, they need the infrastructure to be able to keep this thing going.
Yeah.
So they got to have some funds coming in.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, so I'm more forgiving now.
Yeah. But he was a true believer for sure. So you didn't like Lost Highway that much? Because I didn't like it the first time I saw it, and I really liked it the second time I saw it. But I haven't seen it recently.
Okay, I did not like Lost Highway.
Why
not?
But
a lot of it is ego. You know why?
Why?
Because a friend of mine got onto the movie, and I was jealous.
Oh, really?
So it's like, it was jealousy. It's like, so close, and no, and he was telling me all about it.
Who was it, and what did they do? Was it like an effects thing?
It was Chris Hansen.
Oh, I remember Chris.
Chris, yeah. And so he was working for Michael Burnett at the time.
Yeah.
And bless Chris's heart, he was telling me all this stuff. So he was sharing his experience with me, but I was so envious. I was like, oh no! But it's like, at the same time, I was working at Rick Baker's on Men in Black. So who am I to complain, So it just touched us insecurity nerve. It's like, oh man, no, I want to be on it. But it was filmed at his house in the Hollywood Hills, his house, and I just felt like it just wasn't working, but there's some really good moments. I really liked Robert Blake.
Yeah. I felt like the first part was amazing. Like there's a whole, like from the beginning where the videotape, that was so creepy, getting the videotape.
You're right.
And
first act was good.
Yeah. And Robert Blake and that, I mean, that's a classic, that phone scene. It's like, that's the one everyone plays. It's wonderful. So scary and creepy. I felt like it just got a little, for me, my critique of it is it got a little too weird. Like I wasn't sure what was happening towards the end. It got really kind of crazy. But I mean, I went in, I don't know, with a more open mind the last time I saw it, and I did like it and realized there's a lot of really cool things about it. Whereas Wild at Heart, to me, the reason it's probably the only Lynch film I don't really like, and it really felt like it was it just didn't feel like it was holding together in a weird way. I don't know how to describe it.
Yeah.
And I felt like Lost Highway held itself together, even though it was weird. It's like that. You see Barton Fink, that movie with the Coen brothers, like that got too weird for me at the end. I just didn't like, up until that ending where everything is like on fire and everything. I don't even remember the story, but I remember being like, maybe I'm just too stupid, but I don't really get what's going on.
No, you're not. And I think Barton Fink was a tad pretentious and actually Lynchian. I think it actually had Lynchian moments.
Mm-hmm.
Even the name, even what's his name, that actor's hairdo was almost like
Right.
erased.
Yeah, it's true.
And there were shots of the camera going into like dark voids.
Mm-hmm.
It's like and down, so it's like, oh, they're paying homage to Lynch,
True.
whether they're conscious of it or not. And I agree, but Lost Highway, it just did not work for me. And like I said, Robert Loggia, I didn't buy him, although he's kind of entertaining.
I liked. I mean, that scene where he's beating the guy for tailgating is pretty funny. It's over the top, but it's kind of, I don't know. I felt like it. I bought it because it just seemed like funny. It seemed like it was intentionally over the top.
It was
because he told him he kept telling him louder. That's I heard someone talking about it. Like he kept telling him to scream it more. Like he was intentionally making him go crazy.
And I think you're right. That was the intention. I think things just kind of fell flat for me. And even though Balthazar Getty, I thought he was really good in Twin Peaks: The Return.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find he had the gravitas or chops as a leading man.
Yeah, I could see that. Mm.
Whereas Kyle MacLachlan is like a perfect surrogate for Lynch. He's Lynch's man, and he's so good in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgive him for Dune because that's not his fault either.
Right.
It's like being upped or by Sting, but he's so good, MacLachlan, in everything Lynch has done. They did subsequently, but I didn't buy Balthazar Getty, although I didn't mind him, but I just didn't think he had the chops to hold the movie.
Right. I like Bill Pullman was cool.
Bill Pullman did.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like
that. And I liked Bill Pullman a lot in that.
That's a good point. I didn't think about
right.
it, but now that you mention it, I did kind of feel that way. Like he didn't have that thing that you need. He didn't have that leading man energy or something.
Patricia Arquette did. She was quite mesmerizing. But David Lynch's favorite song is "Song of the Siren" by This Mortal Coil.
Yeah, right.
And he couldn't get the rights to that song in Blue Velvet, so Angelo Badalamenti was forced to come up with something. He used Lynch's lyrics, and they came up with something original,
right,
which is better. Mm-hmm. And I love that "Mysteries of Love" song in Blue Velvet. And so in Lost Highway, he said, I finally got money enough to buy the rights for Song of the Siren, and I thought it fell flat. And that's such a beautiful song that it shouldn't fall flat, and it fell flat because of the context, which was Lost Highway to me, especially in the last act, was not working because I didn't feel it. I didn't feel the chemistry. I didn't feel the chemistry between her and Balthazar. I just did not feel it. And so something, whether they maybe rushed the production or something, because I think that I think it was Barry Giffords, or I can't remember who his co-writer was, but I think they had to produce that script fairly quick. So they did not have the time. To me, I felt it. But I agree with you in that the first act was good, and Bill Pullman's good, Patricia Arquette, and that sequence with Robert Blake, fantastic.
That's the one where I really wish I would have been able to watch it. I actually bought the weird German DVD Blu-ray of Lost Highway, and I have it, and I couldn't find it. It's because everything's a mess here, but I wish I would have watched it before we did this. But isn't that the one where the guy's head is in the table?
Yeah.
That is so weird. That's another great weird thing. Totally cool and bizarre.
That's right.
Yeah, and there's a lot of makeup effects in it where his head at the end, his head's like ballooning up and stuff.
Well, I told you in one of the makeup effects podcasts we did that Chris was telling me that Lynch wanted Bill Pullman's head to blow up the size of like a suitcase.
The shape or the size?
Kind of both.
Oh wow!
And so if you start, it's kind of like the helium voice in Blue Velvet. It's like, wait a minute, had Michael Burnett been able to deliver that head, think how cool that would have been.
Yeah, right.
It needed that.
Right.
And so I felt like this is part of my resentment of Lost Highway, is I felt like no disrespect to Michael Burnett or Chris or any of them that worked on it, but I felt like they should have been able to deliver that suitcase head.
Right. It wasn't.
Why didn't they deliver that suit? What's that?
It wasn't fully realized.
No. And they should have been able to deliver that. And that's why when Chris told me about it, like, I want to deliver that. I want to design that head. I wish I could have done that. That's kind of arrogant, but that's where I was at the moment.
Right.
I wanted to contribute, do that suitcase. And then when I saw the movie, it's like it needed that suitcase head.
Right.
To me, I envisioned we were talking about Beast Within, when that head goes really big, and it's like that's what needed to be in the car.
Right.
That needed to be the suitcase head.
Totally. Yeah.
So I just felt like a lot of conflicted and unsatisfied feelings about that movie.
I wonder if you watch it again, maybe in the future, your opinion will change a little bit, because
there's some great sound and great sound moods, and he's always good at that. So there's always good moments in any David Lynch film. I need to see it again, though.
I feel like his movies there's such a depth to them that you can like them more later as you get older. At least this has been my experience, like sometimes they take a couple of viewings or a few viewings to really grasp fully and appreciate,
You're right. And, that certainly was the case with Blue Velvet, because Blue Velvet messes with your psyche. And if you don't revisit it again, you're never going to be a Blue Velvet fan.
Yeah.
You really do have to revisit it, and then you start to bond. So you're right. I think, but, you bond with the stuff that's pure. It gets back to, Friedkin and The Exorcist and stuff. And so I think in any movie-going experience, if you're not bonding with it, it's less pure.
Right.
The intention's wrong. Someone's doing it, making it, or okay, let's talk about real quick Twin Peaks: The Return. There's a classic episode in Twin Peaks: The Return, which it's famous now. Mm-hmm. It's the Got a Light episode.
Yeah.
It's a great episode.
Yeah.
But it vacillates for me between being pure and being somewhat conscious. And I felt and I've had to think about this, because you have to trust your emotions. It's like, why am I not being as exhilarated as I should be? Because when I'm watching that episode, it's very spotty, and almost like Inland Empire as a whole movie, or it's like it's spotty exhilaration.
Right.
So it's like choppy, not completely pure. I felt like there was an extended sequence where you're going into the atoms that are breaking apart from the atomic bomb exploding, that I felt was consciously indulgent. And I felt like maybe the CG effects of the little creature felt consciously indulgent or realized. But the Godalite character, I thought was pure subconscious, beautiful. One of the best images I've seen in a Lynch film forever, and genuinely creepy and scary. Subconscious.
Yeah.
So, why did I mention this? I'm sorry, I deviated into Twin Peaks: The Return for, I guess, the spottiness. Of purity.
I enjoyed it. I felt like the Dougie stuff was a little long. Like I wasn't enjoying that character to stretch it out. That when he was like, come back in, and he was the Dougie taking over, Dougie, the real estate guy or whatever. And he was kind of like a weird, savant. Guy, idiot savant, kind of like, he's still kind of coming back around. And I mean, there was some cool stuff, like when he was able to make the slot machines win, and that was all cool and interesting, but I just felt like that dragged a bit. But I honestly feel like I need to see the whole thing and all the way through one more time to really evaluate it, because there were so many things I liked about it, like that, but a lot of it didn't make sense at all to me. But that maybe that's fine. I didn't really know what to expect, but like there was stuff like that weird box the guy was guarding, and that weird totally chopped them all up. That thing came through, and I thought that was so cool and weird, and they never really explained They didn't. There's a lot of stuff in that show that wasn't explained at all.
That's what I loved about it. Is it was really brazen, and you know what I'd really kind of like to hear more of, and I'm really curious about, is Mark Frost, his co-writer on the Twin Peaks stuff, and he co-wrote The Return.
Mm-hmm.
I would really like to know what his contribution was, because he's a very seasoned writer, and I'm wondering if he provide the structural handle or rod for David Lynch to hold on to, so it didn't get too out there. Because Mark Frost, you can't do lynching. You can't have you can't have two people at the helm.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if he was there to just kind of help fill in the gaps. But I'm really curious about that, because the Twin Peaks: The Return wasn't entirely successful, but it's okay to me because the moments that worked were wonderful. So it had blank spots.
Right. Yeah.
And it's like, well, that's okay, because you need blank spots. You need visual rests. And that's what I was kind of exploring with my little short film, is like, how far can you push those blank spots in order for the moments that need it to pop? And so Twin Peaks: The Return, I find exhilarating, and you need to watch it again. And I'm so... What was one scene that I love so much? Okay. Let me. I see what you're saying about the Dougie Jones character, but there's one scene
which is funny with Doug. His name's Doug Jones. I always thought that was, knowing Doug Jones, the suit performer we know.
That's right. Yeah, and but Dougie Jones. There's one scene in there of that I thought was act so sublime and beautiful, because to me it represented artistic, the relationship between the muse and the artist, and it's the scene, and it was depicted visually, and it was that scene where Dougie had to go home and do the homework and go through all those case files, and he's literally just like holding the pencil with like a baby, and he's looking at it, and it's like he's like this pure vehicle for the muse, and the muse was the other world, with the curtains and the guy with one arm, and the music was this piece with a saxophone, dreamy saxophone piece by the artist Johnny Jewel. And so Johnny Jewel music is playing. He's sitting at this table. It's at night. His wife's gone to bed, and little Sonny Jim's gone to bed.
Sonny Jim.
And he has to do this impossible task, like a dog trying to do homework. But the muse guides him through it, and it depicts the muse as the slightest little shimmer, you remember, of light to kind of guide his pencil where it needed to go. And to me, that was the perfect representation of the muse. If you're not paying attention, you're not going to see it, or you're not going to hear it. And it's a subtle, slight, beautiful thing that can save you and carry you through. And so that little scene to me was just like I thought, oh, okay, Lynch doesn't even have to succeed in the rest of this series, because he just did it for me right there. That to me was the most, that and the ending, the end credits, where it's her whispering into his ear and they're playing that dark music. And I was like, oh, geez. So to me, Lynch went out on the highest of notes with that.
I loved that last scene where he's talking to her at the door, and the light goes out, and she screams. Right, is what happens. It's that scream, and the light goes out, and it's like that hit me like in a weird. It hit me in the way that I think was intentioned, where it just felt like it was some kind of nightmare that I've experienced. The feeling of that feeling, for some reason, with the light going out and the scream, it just like,
oh wow,
it captured something for me that was like, wow, that was really not like logically in any way. It was more like a feeling thing,
And it was totally unpredictable, because what that scene showed was that Agent Cooper was in over his head. Because he goes, what year is this? So he was in over his head. He was out of his element. And then, therefore, the whole audience we were out of our element, and we weren't going to figure this out.
Right.
And then the end credits, and the end credits are of her, Laura Palmer. You don't know what they're saying, but he had a perplexed, troubled expression on his face. And it was dark, and it's like, yeah, this is, you missed it. You're telling him something disturbing.
Yeah.
And it's like, wow, what courage to take something out.
Right.
To end it on that note.
I know.
To me, I thought it was perfect because it surprised me. And I was like, this is just great. That last episode is fantastic.
Yeah. It in a way, it feels like it was representative of the times too, because it's such a dark, downbeat ending.
Yeah.
And it's like
2017.
Yep. It's reflective.
Yeah. Know where we were at there.
Yep. It's reflective of the times.
That's why it is. It gets back to what you're saying, how we need the artists right now more than ever, because we need a guiding light to take us through this period.
Yeah.
It is dark.
Yeah.
We are in a weird, bizarro world right now.
Now it's dark.
Now it's dark.
That's another cool thing that I didn't realize. I think that was said 3 times in Blue Velvet. Now it's dark. It was him when he turns the light off in that first scene. Yeah. Frank goes, now it's dark. And then one time the candle blows out in one of these, I think it's Nightmare. And he says, now it's dark. And I think he says it one other time too.
Yeah, could be. Yeah. Like, yeah.
Somewhere in there, but, there's, there's just that whole scene of the joyride and where he puts his lipstick, Frank Booth puts lipstick all over his face and kisses him. It was so great. It was so amazing and so disturbing. It's like, feel my muscles.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And the woman dancing in the car. It's like a little child made it so creepy.
And the Roy Orbison song was perfect.
Yeah. Oh, and the guy doing the lip syncing. What's his name? Dean Stockwell. That was that again. That was one of those magic things where he just picked up the light and he was messing around, and Lynch is like, "You got to do that." He just happened to pick up a light, and I was like, "That is just when that's one
of the
movie
gods."
Yeah, exactly. That's one of the things it takes to make great art is you have to have that openness to change when you see something that's better than what you thought your idea was, and be willing to go with it. I think he's had that a lot in his career, that openness and allowing other people to contribute in that way. Just like that, seeing Bob, the guy who was a set decorator, the guy was on Twin Peaks. He was a set decorator that, he caught him in the mirror in one shot, and it was like switched a light off.
That redirected a whole plot line.
Yeah. So he didn't even have.
And he became symbolic of that, like that darkness.
Yeah.
That's there, Yeah.
So cool.
And reoccurring. He was even in The Return. Lynch brought, even though that actor passed away, that's how important that kind of that energy character was, because he brought him back in The Return.
Yeah.
So it's open. Well, you're in that mode. Everything isn't preformed.
Yeah.
It's in formation. And so when you bring other people in to help you, like you're saying, if you're smart, you listen to their input, because they're kind of connected too.
Yeah.
But you are the helmsman, though. And that has to not.
And you have to have that. You have to have this discernment to know when the idea is good, because people will always tell you all the different, their ideas that aren't necessarily in line, and you have to be able to recognize, like, this is right and this one is not right.
And so you and I think he maybe didn't have the discernment when he followed Dennis Hopper's suggestion not to use it. So Lynch can drop it. Yeah.
But again, we also said that it didn't need it. So maybe it was fine.
Yeah. It worked otherwise.
Regardless. The movie was so good that it didn't need that.
Yep.
That's the way I see it. Even though
so Hopper the artist, because he's an artest too.
Yeah.
I went down on when I was in LA on a job one of those times. I went to one of his retrospectives when he was still alive, and it was this old gallery on Wilshire. Of course, he didn't paint them himself, but he was tapped into that artist vibe of the 70s, 60s, and 70s. So he had done these large, like 30 by 30 paintings. He's very much in tune with the muse.
Right. Yeah.
Because not only was an extraordinary actor, he directed, Easy Rider, and he was painting.
Yeah.
So he was of his time. And so he recognized in Lynch, the brilliance, but also that was his little contribution. And we will never know if it was the wrong or right one, but it was his contribution and it still worked. So
yeah.
Bravo to Dennis Hopper.
Yes.
Really.
That character is
amazing.
He probably one of the greatest villains of all film history, I think.
Do you know Alan Splett quit Blue Velvet because Dennis Hopper that character of Frank Booth was too disturbing?
Really?
So Lynch had to finish all of the sound effects weren't complete, and so Alan Splett left, and Lynch had to finish it.
No way.
So, yeah.
Alan Splett split.
Yep.
Okay. This is going along, so we should probably wrap this up. So, what did we miss? Did we miss anything? I mean, we missed a lot, but
I want to, if it's okay, let's talk about that Lumiere and Company documentary real quick.
Okay, yeah, I didn't get a chance to see it, so
okay, so just for the audience, there's a documentary that came out in the late 90s celebrating the first camera that was invented by the Lumiere brothers, I think it is. And what it is, it's a hand-cranked camera that only holds a minute of film. And it can't record any on-site sound. So you're basically making a silent movie that you can dub stuff on top of later. And so it's a hand-cranking, and you can't cut it, so it's one continuous 1 minute sequence.
That was the deal. All the directors.
That was the deal. And the idea of the director of the documentary was to bring all these filmmakers to have a crack at this camera and see what they come up with for 1 minute. And so when I watched this the first time, they saved Lynch's to the very end. And so you're watching all these. It's really interesting because you dial in real quick to what's interesting and what's not, where a director was just kind of coasting or not taking it serious. You felt it. And I love Spike Lee. I love a lot of his movies, especially Do the Right Thing, but he just photographed his son, and it's like, oh, Spike, you're not taking advantage of this opportunity. So it's like he didn't take advantage of it, and a lot of great filmmakers didn't take advantage of it. Some did. Peter Greenaway's was kind of interesting, who did The Cook, the Thief, His Wife, His Lover. And what's his name? Arthur Penn did a kind of an interesting one. He directed Little Big Man. And but when it got to Lynch's, so you've seen like 40 or so 1 minute, 50 movies already, and when you finally got to David Lynch's, it's like, wow, it hits you over the head because you go, all right, here's a guy who sees the opportunity.
Right.
You don't have any cuts. He forced a cut in there. So he created sets. And in between each set was a blank black curtain. So and he had a camera that was on a dolly that just went from A to B. And as it went from A to B, it passed by the curtain with the black.
Cool.
So he inserted a cut.
That's great.
And then an entirely different set, he totally saw the potential of this for creativity, and he seized it. And it shows how, what you were alluding to earlier, what an artist he is.
Yeah.
Because he knows how to be creative.
Yeah.
And I think the reason why so many people, I think, whether they're conscious of it or not, are so sad about Lynch's passing is because he was like this creative tour de force. He knew how to be creative, and it's never more exemplified than in that 1 minute little movie he made for that Lumiere and Company documentary. My dad, when we went and saw Inland Empire, his critique of Inland Empire was like, well, yeah, but he did more in that 1 minute Lumiere movie.
Right.
And it's like, well, and I was like, I couldn't argue with him. It's that Lumiere movie is so damn good. It's almost kind of embarrassing how up and above.
Wow.
So it's so much better than all the rest that
I gotta watch it.
You posted something online, and I think you nailed it. You said he was the GOAT.
Right.
And when you watch that Lumiere and company, you go, well, it's undisputable.
Yeah.
No one else even came close to being as creative and interesting.
That's amazing.
And so the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Well, I agree with you.
That's maybe the difference between a pure artist that has decided to focus on film, that could have focused on painting, that could have focused on music, as opposed to someone that was just a traditional filmmaker. Maybe, there's something.
Yes.
Something. He knows creativity more than he knows filmmaking. It's like everything has a creative solution, and it's wherever you're directing your artistic impulse or interest. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You nailed it. Because he was an artist, he has developed other muscles of creativity. Mm-hmm. So he doesn't have just he doesn't have just big biceps that he can apply to a movie that's just around those biceps. He's got all of his muscles are developed because he jumps from one medium to the next. And so when you have that arsenal of a complete, balanced, creative musculature, physique, then you have that much more power to your energy channeling than anyone else. So, and never more exemplified in that Lumiere and company short. It's just, oh my God, look what he just did with nothing in a minute. And it's stunning. And
yeah. And I think that's where the rubber meets the road, is when you're given extreme limitations. You can either be extremely limited, or you can come up with something brilliant because of the limitation, because you're creatively thinking, how do I come up with a solution to not make this lame or boring, and that makes you think of things that you would have never thought of.
And the muse, the art god, takes notice. It's like, okay.
Yeah.
And he went, okay, join me on this. And wow, he did.
Yeah. That's one other thing to mention too, is the Art Life. That documentary is good. Have you seen that? You've seen that Art Life?
I've got it. I just haven't seen it for a long time. Again, I'm hesitant to kind of see too much of this stuff, because I as much as I love Lynch, he's too powerful of an artist, and I have to distance myself at times.
It probably, I mean, I don't know if you remember it much, but it was like all of his interviews, kind of, where he's talking about stuff and basically talking about the same things he's always talking about, but not really verbalizing it in a very succinct way, but just more like vague talking around it, kind of, just because that's the way he is. But what I liked about it was the shots of him just working, like he's working on his paintings.
Yeah, I do too.
So cool. And he's like building things. Yeah. And he's doing these paintings where it's like he's putting latex and cotton and stuff and making them dimensional. And his paintings, I feel like, are, I'm traditionally more into kind of realism and stuff, but his paintings to me are so entertaining and interesting to look at, because I just like them. They really resonate with me in the way that I think people who genuinely love abstract art, it just resonates with them in a way that it might not resonate with me so much. But those paintings of his, like, I just like them, what I've seen anyway. I just think they're fun and interesting and weird.
You're right. Those are the moments I like best too. And let me show you this book. Have you ever seen this book?
Oh no. Someone is in my house. This book.
And actually, if you were to go down to, my sister was just recently in Los Angeles, and she called me, says, I want to buy you this book. And I said, oh, wait, I already have it. And it's down at the, it's in Barnes & Noble, down in the 3rd Street Promenade. But it has all of this paintings and prints. And it's fantastic. And and all up to the contemporary stuff. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful book. And then this one that I told you about, Room to Dream, is his kind of biography.
Oh, cool. Great.
This is fantastic too.
Excellent.
And so
Yeah.
if I was living closer to you, I'd give these to you to borrow, but they're worth buying.
Yeah.
If you,
Okay.
but
Excellent.
I love his paintings. I love his paintings.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that documentary was good for that reason. You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Um, what I was gonna say one more thing. I don't know. There was so much more to go into. It's just, it's a deep subject, David Lynch, but, yeah, he will be missed. But here's the thing, every artist, every time we lose one of the greats, it becomes, not to say that either of us are saying we're anywhere near David Lynch's level, but as an artist, you have to try. You have to try to pick up the slack. Now a great one's gone. So it's like it kind of lights a fire under every artist's ass. Okay, these guys are gone, so step up, get your ass in gear, and contribute. Whatever it is, it may be, not everyone can be like David Lynch, because a lot of that was, I don't know, divine intervention. Just he's so an unlikely guy to be super famous like this. But you got to, whatever your contribution is, you got to do it, because it's now there's a void there, so even more, I guess we always need to be doing that, but even more, it's like we're still alive. So we got to carry the art thing forward as best we can. It's like our responsibility. When you call yourself an artist, it becomes, it's like if you have that calling, you have to step up.
Yes.
Do it, like a religious calling or something, to be a priest or whatever, it's like your duty, sort of.
You're so right. And and it hit me when he passed. My niece, Cece, she's a big reader and artist, creative, and she loves David Lynch as well. And she's the one that Cece Rigby, my sister's daughter, texted me when he passed. She said, David Lynch passed. And it was like, I knew she was upset, and I was upset. And then I realized, wait a minute. Yeah, it's like what you're saying. It's like, I'm really upset because there's something very, very valuable that he was offering us all.
Right.
And you just simply go, okay, then that means I appreciate our art all the more because of the sheer impact of losing one of the great artists had on me, on you, on my niece Cece, and all around the world.
Mm-hmm.
So all he did was just, with his passing, is just prove how important creativity is, because he was important, because he was so creative. And that you're right, we got to step up, and it lit a fire in me too. And it just like, well, it kind of clarified things. Mm-hmm. It clarified priorities. It's like, what's important?
Right. Yeah.
And if you're an artist, that's what's important. Yep. Of course, loved ones and surviving and providing for those loved ones, but it has a great way of consolidating our priorities.
Yeah.
And it reinforced the priority of how important it is to be creative, to listen to the art gods, mm-hmm. to hone your talent, and just to do things, just to create, just do it. You don't have to be, very few people are ever going to reach the heights of David Lynch, but that doesn't matter.
No.
Because we're all unique.
Yeah.
We all can contribute. And just the act of doing things is valuable.
Yeah. And art is like this ongoing stream, and everyone's contributing to it, or not, if you're not. But one final point I did want to make, that think about this. This is kind of depressing, but it's also just shows how fortunate we are. Is, would you ever imagine someone like David Lynch would be as big and successful in this crappy ass, lame ass culture we live in? The only reason he got in was because he made this amazing movie, Eraserhead. It was just like it was a freak occurrence. It's like every once in a while, a great artist slips by. Otherwise, they're completely ignored. It's like how many other David Lynches are out there that aren't going to get their shot, or for whatever reason, they're not going to get that shot to make that first movie, or they're not going to take the chance, or they're not going to get lucky in the way that he got lucky to get that internship or whatever that the what do you call it, artist residency at that
at the Art Institute.
At the Art Institute, and it's like because he got that, it's like he snuck in the back door and he became bigger than none of the powers that be in media would ever bet on a guy like him. Just by they would never even give him a chance to make Eraserhead. It would have never happened. And then we would have been not had all this influence. Can you imagine not having the influence of David Lynch in your life, all the movies and everything he's done? And it's like every once in a while these guys sneak in, and it's like this band. There's this band Primus. I don't know if you know Primus, but they're like they snuck in on the grunge thing. They're not a grunge band. They're totally weird, and they make weird music that's really good, but they shouldn't be as famous. And they've got this cult following, and they're successful. They make money, but they snuck in the back door because of during the grunge era, all these labels were signing just anybody because they didn't know, because they knew this big thing was happening, but they didn't know who the next big thing was. So they signed everybody, and Primus got in, and now they're like, this Les Claypool, the main guy in it, the bass player, is like, also he's got a winery. He makes animated movies. He's like one of these kind of creative genius guys. And, it's just like, it's sad on one hand that people have to sneak in because it just makes the world so much better place, these kinds of artists. But we were so lucky that they snuck in,
Well, and the thing that allows you to sneak in is like what you're saying about Eraserhead. You've got to eat well.
Yeah.
So Primus was probably eating very well.
Right.
Enough to where
they were. They were, you got to be, what do they say? You got to be, what's the phrase? You got to be prepared for luck.
Oh, luck benefits the prepared mind or something like that. Yeah,
something like that. So it's like, if you're prepared and you have that luck, because luck is a part of it, that why he got his thing. If he didn't have that luck, he probably would have never happened in the same way. Because he's like a major figure. I haven't seen on social media, I can't believe how many people I see posting about David Lynch. Like, it's a big deal that he died. A lot of people loved him. And he's such he should be, according to regular culture, this underground figure that not that many people are into, like, maybe in the 70s, how he was regarded, but he's like a powerful force in the world of art and film, and I just,
he is. And, I think it's what he exemplifies. It's like it. And then he represents all artists, and that if you do what you feel like you need to do, then those people that don't have the luxury, or those people that can't, or even those people that were never meant to be creative, can still benefit from it.
Yeah.
And it's like we need the artists in the world, and even deep down, I think people are exhilarated by those unconventional, strange cats who don't worry about money, and they're trying to live this life that doesn't conform to mainstream Americana.
For sure. But the people with the money are not giving those guys money easily.
No. So this other mainstream thing, this shallow, superficial, horrible, capitalistic force exemplified in greedy people like Musk and all these, all the Bezos and all the, that's not, we know that's wrong. The Billionaire Chic, as I did my little series. We know it's wrong. And so then you see someone like Lynch who defies all of that.
Yeah.
And there's kind of this purity within him. And his stuff's weird. It's so unconventional. It's exhilarating to people, I think. It really is. It's like, oh, well, that's the antithesis.
Right.
And artists, we really are the antithesis of that.
Yeah.
And, but it's hard to be an artist, as you know, as
Yeah,
I know.
they make it so hard. They make it so hard to do, and it's so necessary. It's
so necessary.
It's crazy. It's like they really make you like, okay, you want to be an artist? Good luck.
Oh, and you know it better than anyone. It's a struggle, and but that's where the dignity comes in, because it's you're doing, you're creating. We are creating and doing. Even though I'm not as precariously situated as you, I still am, but it's like my livelihood right now is in doing collectibles.
Mm-hmm.
It's a different hat, but they allow me to just like, so I can at least somewhat pay my bills with collectibles. Thank God.
Mm-hmm.
My mind's always going towards my personal.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay. And that's the balance we have to juggle. And you have to balance almost like tighter, because you have to sell your work, and yours is more precarious and more admirable, and because it's more personally linked. But it's hard for anyone.
Yeah, it's hard for
anyone to try to do this and not to try to maintain it.
Yeah.
And so Lynch represented someone who's able to maintain it his whole life, and it's admirable.
Yeah.
It really is.
Well, that's a great place to end it, but I'm going to spoil that, because one thing I didn't mention really quick. Okay. He's not regarded. He a lot of his films are horror films. They're not, but if you think about it, like Eraserhead's a horror film. Think about it, like
it, and a comedy.
Yeah, right. But Blue Velvet is kind of like a horror film too. They're kind of like detective films. Even Lost Highway. He's and it's so funny because he's not like any other horror director. You never think of him as a horror director, but he's kind of the perfect example of what I call a dark artist. Like, even though he Straight Story proves, Elephant Man proves he's not strictly dark, but he leans that way. Yeah, that's his natural tendency. As much as he likes to talk about the balance and you have to have the two contrasts, he's definitely more on the dark side for sure. With the ideas he comes up with, the clever stuff he comes up with is usually really creepy and weird and scary. That's like the horror in film, horror film. So I just find it interesting that he's kind of also a horror movie director, but in a totally unique way that's not lame like most horror movies are. He brings like respectability to the genre of horror with some of the stuff he's done, I think.
I mean, is there a bigger monster than Frank Booth?
Oh yeah, exactly.
I mean, he's a monster. Yeah. No, you're absolutely
And
right.
A lot of the imagery, the ear, and so much of it is like, it's horror movie imagery. If it was handled by another person, it would be more.
And it messes with your head like Halloween or anything else. It does. But it's totally unique. He does something that's not just unprecedented. Blue Velvet was unprecedented, just like Gene Siskel said. Oh, we're in over our heads, and we were.
Yeah.
And that's, and it got Roger Ebert all roiled up and riled up and disturbed. So no, you're right. He is. It's, I kind of, it almost makes me wish that it's like, what would he be done if he handled like a conventional horror movie?
Right. I know.
What would he come up with? And it's like, I kind of hope Quentin Tarantino comes up with like just a conventional horror movie, or these auteurs, and just see what would they do with it?
Right.
Like Kubrick doing The Shining.
Yeah.
It's something special has got to happen.
Yeah. Imagine a David Lynch, Stephen King penned film. Yeah. That could be really cool.
He could deviate from it, but he'll hold on with a basic structure, like we were saying.
Like Kubrick did.
Like Kubrick did. Yeah.
Okay, that was a long one. I might have to cut this into. I might cut this into 2 episodes, actually.
Whatever you think is best. But
that was so much fun, man. I always appreciate you coming on. I've gotten. I mean, we're still recording this as part of the podcast, but I've gotten feedback on how much people enjoy you on the show. Like they think you're so cool. Yeah, people think you're like such a great person, and they're really like the way you talk. I've heard a number of people tell me that.
Oh, well, that's nice to hear. But what it is, Chet, is I think you and I are coming from a very similar
Yeah,
place.
for sure.
And so it makes talking with you easy to discuss. So thank you. No, it's a pleasure. It's fun because I understand where a lot of where you're coming from.
Yeah. We understand
can
each
kind
other.
of meld minds on these topics. So thank you for letting me. And this was very emotional and important to me, and I think for anyone.
Yeah.
And so I can't think of a more important celebration of it than to celebrate dark arts by talking about David Lynch.
Yeah, definitely.
The epitome of dark arts, but it's more than that, humanity and creativity and all of that fall wonderfully within the dark arts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you, Chet. I sure appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate your time. Always taking time. So we just have to say goodbye to the audience in whatever way you would like to say goodbye to the audience.
Goodbye, and thank you, David Lynch.
Yes.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Chet.
Now it's dark.